All due respect to us, Neil, what's going on here?
Right. Yeah, let's start there.
What's going on here? So when coronavirus first emerged several weeks ago, everybody was talking about it as a supply issue, that China's manufacturing sector was shutting down. There were all these disruptions. These were going to cause ripple effects through supply chains into U.S. manufacturers, perhaps create shortages of certain products, things like that. And I think as the last several weeks have progressed, we've realized, oh no, this is something more complicated than that and more dangerous. It's also a demand shock. It's also, to combat this virus appropriately in the United States, there's going to have to be a lot of activity that just shuts down. A lot of large gatherings of people, conferences, travel, cruise ships, all kinds of potentially sporting events, and the potential of lost demand, lost business activity as everybody kind of hoards their time and stays home and avoids public places, that's something that could do lasting damage to the U.S. economy.
So as we have a supply shock colliding with a demand shock, I'm going to bring up the R word here. What's your guess on a recession?
I think it's looking more likely than not this year. It's not a given. It's not a sure thing. But I think the moves we've seen in financial markets in just the last 3 weeks, especially around bond yields, what those are telling us is that there's going to be a meaningful slump in business activity. Whether it officially gets classified as a recession or not, ultimately we'll see. But we're going to feel it. And this is something that's going to cause some real pain. Again, concentrated in those travel and tourism industries and restaurants, a few others. But this isn't going away anytime soon.
I mean, I am pretty sure that the first time we had you on, Neil, was in the wake of the column you wrote where you said, central bankers are starting to realize that they may not have the tools anymore to deal with massive shifts in the economy. And so we were talking last week about the Fed suddenly cutting interest rates and saying, is this even a tool? And then here we are with really low interest rates and a president calling for more. And you wonder, is monetary policy just spitting into the wind at this point?
I mean, a little bit, right? So before the 2007,
which it shouldn't be doing because
2008,
that's very germ spready.
Exactly. Avoid spitting. So before the global financial crisis, the federal funds rate, which is the interest rate that the Fed targets, was 5.25%. So they had all that room, 5.25 percentage points to cut it down to zero to try and stimulate growth. It still wasn't enough to prevent that from being a quite severe recession, but they had it and it probably made things less bad. Now we're down to 1.25 already. There's just not that much room using traditional tools for the Federal Reserve to act. But I think the fact that we're even talking about that is a sign of something problematic, which is we're putting all this weight on the central bank to try and solve an economic disruption. They've been the only game in town, has been the common line for more than a decade. But maybe that's just because other actors in Washington aren't doing their part. And I think, people say, oh, what's a, half a percentage point rate cut going to do? You're right, not that much. But, that's why we need other aspects of public policy to be brought to bear to try and minimize this damage.